Hey, if you don't like social media, I've got some good news for you. Perhaps we are entering the end times of social media. With the rise of artificial intelligence produced spam and engagement driven content that drowns out real human connection, perhaps social media, as we know it, is coming to an end. Let's talk a little bit more about this with Mitch Joel, tech advisor, co-founder of ThinkersOne, and the author of Six Pixels of Separation and Control-Alt-Delete. Hi, Mitch. How you doing?
I'm great. That should be the name of my cooking book, Six Pickles.
Six Pickles. Be
I'm
yummy.
go with that.
I think there's a fast food chain that's doing a big pickle promotion right now. I think I saw an ad about it, but I digress. Okay, let's talk about the end of social media. And one of the things that I've picked from this subject is that a lot of it is because of what we've discussed before, AI slop. Just garbage that is so easy to produce now because thanks to artificial intelligence, press one button, poof, you've got millions of pieces of content that can be created. Tell us more.
Well, I think that concept is somewhat inverted. I would make the argument that we see that these social media feeds are dominated by content that has been optimized for the algorithm. It's engineered for clicks, for likes, for comments. That's not necessarily for people or what they believe. And then the more people engage with that content, it's a circular push back into that validates it. And so when AI comes into the picture, that's what it thinks, quote unquote, works. And the argument might be that if we have that kind of shift in content, that perhaps more and more people who don't buy into this would step away. Meaning, if you go back to the old days of early Wikipedia, the idea was 2% of the people are creating this and updating and editing Wikipedia, and everyone else, the 90+%, are just the result of it. And so while you have a lot of kids and people like us sharing all sorts of innocuous stuff on Instagram, ultimately, it's still feeding the greater content creation that's moving at scale.
But I'm seeing more and more instances where users are calling out that the content they're trying to consume is actually AI generated and they don't like it. Like, so let's say I've been on Reddit and I've been in a thread, and this is like a Reddit forum I've been on for years and years and years, useful, like how-tos, all that kind of stuff. And then someone will point out, oh, this subject, the account is a bot. This was created by AI. And now I've just read it. Partially, I may have actually taken something out of it, but I'm like, wait a minute. The content's AI generated. Some of the comments underneath are AI generated. And I'm asking myself, what am I even doing on this thread?
Well, that's what's interesting about even mentioning Reddit. I'd argue that if you look at Reddit, their size, their traffic, it is somewhat an idea of what we're looking at is the push to what's next, these smaller, more specific social media networks, meaning as a marketing professional, there is no place for me on Reddit. They will tear me apart from limb to limb and then take it outside of Reddit into the more generic platforms as well. So Reddit in and of itself becomes a thought of these are places where that type of content is called out because you have a higher majority of people that are creating and engaged in the content to maintain the purity of those Reddits. And I would even argue the subreddits are really where the action is at there.
So listen, there's a thought process here that we're drowning in this content. And what it means is if there's so much more content because it's created from artificial intelligence, that every single piece of content is going to get less engagement. Okay. So I'm seeing some stats like Instagram has dropped 24% year over year. TikTok is finally seeing a plateau and coming down from its highs. And that's because there's just so much content. Everything is being lost in a sea.
Yeah, it could also be that they are reaching some type of size issue where there's just so many people that how much more can you actually grow? And then you are somewhat a victim of that success in terms of the content being there. I'm actually less concerned about that, believe it or not. But in reading the article that we're talking about, which is called The Last Days of Social Media at Noema Magazine, I recommend everybody check out this article. It's fantastic. We'll leave a link to it. It's this idea that social media is turning us into having this ambient disassociation. The fact that we are scrolling, not because we necessarily want to, but because we actually don't know how to stop, that it's just part of our habits and our addictions, that it fills time, it helps us suppress our anxiety, and that it actually probably numbs us rather than makes us connected. To me, the human part of it is where I'm more interested in. And the question that I really have is, will this actually be the last days of social media, or will we fall more and more victim into this idea of this ambient disassociation? And that's where I think we as a society need to take a step.
I do also think it could be an opening for new forms of connecting, even things that aren't online, because how do you make sure something is real? By doing it in real life and not being worried that you're talking to a bot and not a real person online. I want to try and get to one other topic here, Mitch, with you this morning, and it has to do with the terrible videos that many of us saw last week in the aftermath of the killing of Charlie Kirk. I saw a video of that killing, of that shooting, that I would never have wanted to see. I didn't choose to see it. It just showed up in my feed. Going through videos, boom, I see horrific video of that killing. And I want to know if you have a thought or two on how to stop that, if it can be stopped in this day and age.
I don't know if it can actually be stopped, but I believe it can be slowed down, and I believe it can be gatekept. If you think about the way breaking news, we talk about breaking news all the time. Breaking news was still recorded, filmed, curated, to a certain degree, have a journalist look at it, edited, some type of connection to, is there a filter here that gives us more culture and color around the issue? So do I think that we can have that? I'm not sure. I think that there's definitely this grassroots strategy to try to stop this. I don't think that that's the ultimate answer. I do think we can do things like proper age verification. The reason you and I had this conversation actually on Friday was because my feeling is part of the way we can throttle it is by making sure less people see it. And we obviously know that once you give anybody access online, it's unfettered. There's no age restrictions. There's no limitation. It's just there. So one way is we could slow it down by having age verification. We're talking about adding friction is what I'm actually saying here at a macro scale. The other way is that we know that these platforms should be able to leverage some form of these generative AI tools to throttle it. Meaning, you're right, the first 1,000, it might just explode out of the gates. But at that point, they do have the algorithms and technology to say, what's happening here? And let's just throttle it until we can actually see if there is some sort of situation as we had with Charlie Kirk, where it was just too graphic for any human being to see. So there are little things we can do. And I really am a big proponent of this idea that adding friction, much in the same way we put speed bumps on a hill that's going down and letting people race, that these are the things we have to start to look at, because ultimately we're not seeing it come from government, but we should.
But so like what social media platform would willingly add friction? It seems like the whole part, like this whole thing is about reducing friction in order to increase growth.
Well, let's be clear. You came out with data, as we talked about the last topic, that engagement metrics are actually collapsing even as this content proliferates. So maybe this is actually the play. The play is let's get real people back. Let's get real community back. Let's get real connection back. Mm-hmm. And the way we're going to do that is to go down this path rather than the path we perceived.
On the text line here, I have a listener saying that video showed up on my grandson's phone and all of his friends' phones. And I wonder if you have a thought or two on what children are being confronted with on social media, and if you think there's like long-term damage that comes from that.
The Utah governor, Spencer Cox, said on Friday that social media is a cancer on our society right now, and I would encourage people to log off. The problem here is because it is breaking the way it does, that means constantly being logged off. I don't think we need that absolutist strategy, but I do think we as parents, community members, need to start thinking about when these kids have access and how. And maybe even, I mean, we talked about how contentious that we stopped news in Canada on social networks for another reason, but that might be another strategy, which is if you want news is available in this specific format and channel.
Talk about opening up a can of worms, trying to go down that path. And I'm not even sure that's the best way to go. I think I could make tons. We both could probably make all the counter arguments on that line of thought. Okay, Mitch, I have to leave it there. I want to thank you for coming on.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Elias.
That's Mitch Joel, co-founder of ThinkersOne.